Jasmine here to do It's All About Eyeball feedback today. We've got three eyeballs to look at, painted and procedural. So let's get started. First up is Dipali, and I am seeing in your comments you're saying that the UVs are behaving differently every time. That's definitely not something that we want to happen. We want them to be very consistent and not behaving differently. It's hard for me to tell what's going on with the UVs without actually seeing the UVs. If you could provide a UV screenshot of what the UVs are looking like, I believe they should be circular. I mean, they should pretty much be like a projection of what this is with this hole in the middle. So definitely send that to me. I mean, I can kind of guess by looking at the painted, it almost seems like it's stretched on the in X almost. So you definitely want to do that. Start. Remember the grid, that UV check grid, where you can put it on, and you can see if that grid is stretched, like if the numbers are skewed, if the boxes aren't square, it means that UVs are stretched. So that's the first thing I would say, to figure out what's going on with the UVs, because if the UVs aren't in a good place, you're just going to be struggling with the textures. But that being said, I'll make some brief comments about the actual look of it. And looking at your reference, and thank you for putting the reference here so nicely in the center, it's really helpful. If I look at the reference, the first thing I always notice when I look at these irises close up, which I don't realize when I look into someone's eye, is there is a very distinct outline on these eyes, right? On the iris specifically. And it's usually a darker shade of whatever eye color it is. So, for instance, here on both the procedural and the painted, we're missing that. So that's something we definitely want to kind of bring in this dark. And also here it's small, but I can see in the painted you have like this yellowish tinge here, and I'm missing that. I'm seeing it a little bit, but it seems like it will come out a little bit more, and it's a little bit more towards like the orangey feel, where this is more of a lemony feel to it. And I would say like procedurals is it's tricky when you first wrap your head around it, and I see like the initial stages are there. And what I love about procedurals is, think about layering, right? So once you get the base down, then this layer could even be another layer, the different color, and you kind of add on that. You don't want to add on too much because layered shaders can get expensive, but that's something that you can definitely play with. So, and I will say overall, like this, the scale of this is too big. And I think that, like I said, it goes back to the UVs. So let's first focus on what's going on with the UVs. So post a screenshot of your UVs, and I'm not sure why they would be behaving differently each time. I guess the one thing is, if it's a projected UV, I don't know. Part of me is thinking like, are the textures swimming if the eyeball is moving? But your eyeball shouldn't even be moving if you're just rendering it still. So let's figure out the UVs first. Let's move on to the next eye, which is Erin here. And I'm going to pull up this one. Okay. And I'm looking at this one, and I love this reference. And I see I already mentioned kind of this outline, and I'm definitely seeing it in, the procedural, which is really nice. And the painted. I'm curious, you guys, like the painted, are you actually trying to like paint it yourself in Photoshop, or you're taking an image, like already kind of like a close-up image of an eyeball, but without the reflections, and putting it on? Because you can do either, but unless you have a lot of time and you're a really good painter, your probably best bet is to look for textures of actual photographs of close-up eyes and irises, and you can definitely Google image that. So, because I just say that because the painted one is looking almost procedural, like you painted it, which is impressive if you did that. But that's the one thing I'll say. And then, so I always look at when I'm looking at this stuff is like, do you notice how you have the pupil here, and there's always kind of, it never just comes straight out. Like this yellow area is like almost circling the pupil, and it's like this very organic thing because the iris is very organic, right? So we want to try to mimic that. And for instance here, like all of a sudden it doesn't feel right, that transition. So we want to always like kind of look at that and see how this yellow, if we want to mimic the reference, this should kind of be circling around it. And also it's feeling a little bit dirty, I want to say, because this is feeling like a black color almost to me, where this, if you look at it, it's kind of just like a deeper shade of blue. Um, so that's the colors you also want to match. And there's also a lot more detail that I'm seeing in the reference, where here it's a great beginning stage, but you want to layer on top of that. You want to first, get the color tone right. I think this is going too gray black. I think you should bring back in this kind of blue color you have going on here. This actually might even be getting a little bit too saturated compared to this color here. And especially in procedurals, you want to kind of like layer it up. The scale is a big thing. Like there's a lot more noise going on in here that you want to mimic in there. And then also it's just feeling a little bit flat. So once you get kind of, the first step is to get the base color, right? In there, and then you kind of layer in the details, and then after that, then you start to apply things like a subtle bump or displacement in there to kind of make it feel like more more, what's the word, less flat. I mean more realistic, right? When you look at something, it's not like a flat piece of paper. There's actually depth to it. So that's the steps you want to go to, and I think that would be a great place for you to start working on as you are working on this. So like think about layers: the base, the color, then the details, and then you add in like things like the bump and stuff last. Okay, and now let's move on to your other half. I didn't mean to say it that way, but Ashley, I love that you guys are doing these things together. Let's see. I'm sorry if it gets cut off a little at your reference. So I'm looking at this, and procedural is the top one, it seems like, and then create a UV map inside of Maya. And this is the painted one. Okay, so it does seem like you did take the map of this onto that, and I'm liking it. It is feeling like really dark and black here instead of this kind of nice brown amberish color. So that I would look into. The colors between this one and the reference, these two are pretty close, but the color on the procedural is very different. So I would work on matching that. And then also I think you're working on kind of getting that outline on the outside. It can probably go more uniform all the way around, but then also look on the inside of the pupil, right? On the inner part, there's like a very distinct brown grad kind of coming out of there, where I'm not seeing it here. So you definitely want to look at that. And scale wise, it's not bad. It's looking a little bit too uniform here, and I look into adding like a little bit of noise or something so it doesn't feel so CG and feels a little bit more organic in that way. But yeah, I think adding those elements and also check the colors is going to be your next step, and it's looking great. And then after that, then I would say yeah, and then step back. This is looking a little dark and muddied, I'll also say as well. But overall, yeah, I think it's great. And just looking at this, the white is like super white. I know we don't usually see the too much of the sclera, the white part of the eye, but it's looking really like almost surface shader white. So I would put like work on that look a little bit, like get that kind of subsurface almost in it, tints of, sometimes it's like a little pinkish to the white. So things like that to bring it all together. But overall, I think this is a great first go of all your eyes. So I can't wait to see more. In the meantime, have a good day. Bye, guys.